There's a new version of Clockwork out called Melting Point, and you clicked on this video, so I'm betting that you want to learn as much as you can about this new release. In this video, I'll be showing you all the features that you need to know, including what's changed, what stayed the same, and what's new. And I'll also show you some of the things that you can build with this mod, including a few flying machines. By the end of this video, you'll know how to get started with building your own creations, and you'll also be aware of how to avoid some of the common mistakes and problems that you might run into while using this mod. Let's start by having a look at the basics. Valkyrian Skies and Clockwork are above all mods about physics, so the first order of business is to create a physics object. So to do that, I'll take the Wander Wand and I'll select each corner of what I want to turn into a physics object. Now the next thing I do is I right click on the physics infuser with the Wander Wand, and there's going to be this animation that plays. So the animation takes a while. There's this little purple cube that rises up. We can either wait for the animation to finish, or we can go ahead and right click on the physics infuser and we'll see this pop up and it will become a physics object. So that means that I can grab it with something like the Gravitron, move it around. I can also add blocks to it, and they will also be part of this physics object, and they will also be bound by the laws of physics. So for example, if I keep adding stone blocks here, well, it's going to tilt over because the center of gravity has moved. So there's also another way of creating physics objects. In both cases, we need to use the Wander Wand and we need to select the volume that we want to turn into a physics object. So this was already selected because I'd already made a physics object here. It's kind of like glue, how it sticks around sometimes. So what I'm going to do is I've selected this and I'm going to go over to my supercharged Gravitron, and we have a few options like grab, assemble, and disassemble. I'm just going to go ahead to assemble and I'm going to right click. So one of the goals of Clockwork is to be a survival friendly mod. So they give us several ores that act as sources for the useful Wanderlight crystal, which is used as a crafting ingredient for many recipes in the mod. And one cool thing about these ores is that if you interact with them, they'll turn into a physics object and they'll even start rising up into the sky. So if I do F3 and B, we'll see that it has a hitbox, and if I add pieces of ore to it, it'll slowly rise up into the sky. And instead of going downwards, these parts where I add more ore will go up instead of down. So these ores serve as a source of anti-gravity if you want to see it that way. So now that we've seen the basics of how physics works, let's have a look at the components that this mod gives us that allow us to interact and engage with the physics objects in our world. So here we have the phys bearing, or better known as the physics bearing, that allows us to spin objects or to just hang them passively. So what's cool about this, let's say compared to a mechanical bearing, is that if I place blocks on this, well, they'll actually engage and interact with the world. So here it kind of has trouble. It doesn't just go through the floor automatically. Here it's kind of forcing, but it's kind of bouncing back, so it's kind of glitching out, but it's not just going through easily. So I can do a few things. I can change the speed here. I can increase the speed and it's going to spin faster, and I can also right click it with a wrench and I can change the mode. So follow angle follows the angle of the input. So if I'm telling it to spin around, it's going to spin around. If I go to unlocked, well, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to react the same way. It's also going to be more affected by the physics. So it's going to be more interactive with the world. And I can also lock it, which I think locked might not work perfectly at the moment, might still have some bugs in there. So I'm going to go ahead and look here. And we have a physics bearing that is just set to unlock. So I'll go ahead and place some wool on it. We're going to see it's going to spin because I'm changing the center of gravity. I'm unbalancing it. Let's get it balanced again. I'll just put a piece on the bottom and it's going to swing around. But if I right click this and I go to follow angle, suddenly it's going to lock in place because it's trying to follow the angle that I'm inputting to it. So because I don't have anything giving it rotation, it's not going to spin. It's just going to stop where it is. So I'd imagine that this is a bit what locked should do, though at the moment it doesn't seem to be implemented. So physics bearings are very easy to use. All you have to do is place it, place a block on it, and you can right click on it with an empty hand and it's going to assemble, and the piece that you have here will become a physics object and will be affected by gravity and other things. So if I right click and I move this to unlocked, now it'll be affected by gravity and it'll move around. Another way of doing this is you can create a larger object and assemble it with glue, and then when you right click the physics bearing, this entire object will become a physics object. As you can see, we do F3 and B and we can see the whole hitbox for the physics object. And in this case, when you add blocks to it, they will also become part of that physics object. You can do a lot of cool things with physics bearings. So you can use them to make wheels for vehicles. Even though there's mods like Trackwork, you can make standalone vehicles like cars with just Clockwork. So you don't need to use special wheel blocks. You can make your own with the physics bearing. And I've also used the physics bearing in a lot of the advanced mechanisms that I've made. So I have a video where I've made 10 of these mechanisms and they pretty much all use the physics bearing because that allows you to go above and beyond and be creative in your builds. If your goal is to make something like an airplane or another kind of flying machine, you're in luck because the mod gives us a whole bunch of dedicated blocks just for that. So first off, let's have a look at the cambered wing and the wing. So the cambered wing will always give you lift. So this is what was formerly known as just the wing in older versions of Clockwork, but now it's called the cambered wing. And maybe a little confusingly, we have the wing, which plays the role that the flap previously played. So there's nothing called the flap anymore, and you can put it on a flat bearing to have it behave as a flap. So there's two kinds of flat bearings, the regular old flat bearing and the smart flat bearing. So first off, let's have a look at the regular flat bearing. So you'll see that this is tilted a little bit. My flap on here is tilted. That's because I have an analog signal on this side. So if I go ahead and reset this back to 0, we're going to see that it's perfectly leveled. And if I add signal on this side, well, it's going to tilt this way. But what's also cool is that I can actually adjust it also by putting a signal on both sides. So it'll kind of do the same thing as if just 3 was here. So 7 minus 4 is 3. So we get this angle. So you can use this to kind of add trim to your flaps. Trim is something that adjusts your the pitch of your airplane, so you can, let's say your plane might be tilting a little bit upwards all the time, you can adjust that flap to kind of get you more level, and then you can still have the control to go up or down in addition to that trim that you've applied to your flat bearing. So this is a lot like the old flat bearing in earlier versions of Clockwork, but what's really cool is the new smart flat bearing. So you don't have to put redstone receivers anymore. You can directly put the frequencies into the block, so you can have more compact designs. So I've gone ahead and put some transmitters here. I could also set up a controller, but just for this illustration, I thought it was easier to do it like this. So I have the chassis and the bearing here, and I have the inverse on this side, which applies to this side, and this one applies to this side. So if I go ahead and add a redstone signal here, well, it'll be transmitted from here to this side, and it'll tilt in this direction. And just like the regular flat bearing, I can also add a signal on the other side to balance it out. These flat bearings are the main way that you'll be controlling your airplanes. So one useful note is that you need to right click to assemble and to disassemble. So I'm going to go ahead and disassemble, and I want to add more wing blocks here. So I can go ahead and do it like this. It has to be wing blocks. You can't use sails. You must use the wing blocks. And if I go ahead and right click here, well, we're going to see that they don't exactly connect. That's because we need to glue them together, just like a contraption. So once I go ahead and glue all that together and I right click here, we'll see that the entire wing tilts as it should. So just remember, when you're adding wing blocks to your bearing, to add glue to it, or else it won't assemble properly. I'll show you how I set these up on my plane. So I've got some elevators in the back and some ailerons on the side. So the elevators are what allow you to go up and down, and the ailerons are what allow you to roll your aircraft to be able to steer. I'll show you the rest of how the plane works, and I'll fly it around once I've shown you all the elements that you need to actually build your own plane. So any aircraft you build is going to need a way to propel itself forward as well as steer. And to do that, we have the propeller. So to build a propeller, we have two bearings. We have the brass propeller bearing and we have the jury-rigged propeller bearing. So the jury-rigged propeller bearing is a less good version of the brass propeller bearing. There's less efficiency if you use the jury-rigged propeller bearing. So let's go have a look at this setup right here. So by the way, there's also the blade controller, and this is probably the most important part. So before I show you this, I'm going to show you how the blade controller works. So there's a few kind of blades. You have a regular blade, a wide blade, and you can also make longer blades by crafting them together. So the regular blade will have less thrust, but it'll also require less stress units. If you go to the wide blade, that'll give you a bit more thrust at the cost of more stress units. And if you build a longer blade, that's going to give you even more thrust, but also at the cost of more stress units. So to set up the blades, all you have to do is right click the unassembled blade controller. So you can right click and you can add blades. I like 3, I find it looks pretty good, but we can go up to 8 blades per blade controller. So I'm clicking and there's not any more blades. I can right click on it with an empty hand and remove blades. So right now it has 7. So if I right click the front here, you see this number 0. So I can move this around and that changes the angle of the blade. So if I leave it at 0, it will not produce any thrust at all. So I'll put it in the middle, I'll put it at like 45. And now this gives us an angle and this will actually produce thrust. So in order to actually spin the blade controller, we have to attach it to a propeller bearing like this. So I have the brass bearing, and like everything else, we right click with an empty hand to assemble. So it makes a sound that lets you know that it's assembled and it'll start spinning. Of course, we provide rotation and that gives it its spin. So here I've made a setup. I have a blade controller attached to a bearing. So this provides thrust, and that thrust gets converted into motion that allows you to move your aircraft around. So here I've set up an experiment. We have 3 different propellers and they're all spinning at the same speed. They're all at 16 RPM. But what I have here is I have a regular propeller blade, and here I have a wide propeller blade, and you'll see how much faster the wider propeller blade propels the whole thing forward. So they're both spinning at 16 RPM and they have an angle of 45 degrees. I'm not sure what the optimal angle is, but I've been putting 45 degrees on all of my propellers and I've been getting a pretty good result. And right here we have this contraption spinning crazy fast, and that's because I put this really long blade on it. So it's large in your inventory, and I got this by assembling a few blades together several times to make this almost comically large propeller blade. And you can see how fast it's spinning around, but this costs a lot of stress units. So you can make your planes go faster by having large propeller blades, but you're gonna have to provide the stress units for it to be able to do so. So if you want to set this up from scratch, all you have to do is place the propeller bearing, the blade controller, add some blades to it, right click this number right here and bring it to something like 45 degrees. And then once you've done that, you can right click on the controller here and add your motor, your source of rotation, and it'll start spinning. So I can adjust the speed and I can also adjust the direction that I want the blade to spin in. So it can spin either way, but it's also dependent on the input speed as well. So that's a way of changing the direction of rotation without having to adjust your actual rotation source. Now the mod also has a specialized bearing for helicopters called the copter bearing, but before we go ahead and look at that, let's go have a look at the airplane that I built. So here we can see that I've used a brass propeller bearing connected to this blade controller. So I have 3 blades and they're also at about a 45 degree angle. I've set up a clutch here so that my propeller isn't always spinning, because you gotta have control of your plane, otherwise it's just gonna fly around and you're gonna lose it. And that's something that happens quite a bit in this mod. You lose your planes, so just be sure that you have a way to turn it off. For example, if you fall out, or if the whole thing becomes glitchy. Sometimes your plane is going to start glitching and it's going to teleport. Just have a way to turn it off fast. You want to have that bound to a button so that you can quickly turn off your plane. So on this plane, I've actually set up a toggle latch. So I have a frequency that toggles this and then transmits that signal to this receiver right here that activates or deactivates the clutch. And I also have 2 creative motors, so I have this one here that controls the engine. That one's set at 175, and then I also have another one that controls the flaps. So if I give the flaps a higher RPM, they're going to move faster, and a lower RPM will make them move slower. So I find 16 works fine. You can adjust to see what works best for your builds. As for this creative motor, I could also have put larger blades or wider blades on my propeller instead of increasing the speed. I could also add more blades, so I only have 3 blades. I could add some additional blades up to 8 to make this go a little bit faster. And something else that I've done is I've actually used wheels from Clockwork. So Clockwork is another add-on mod for Valkyrian Skies that focuses on wheels and tracks. So if you've seen cars or tanks that people have made with Valkyrian Skies, they've probably used Clockwork. So this is just one of the features. It's compatible, it's up to date. By the way, I'm on Create Mod 6. So this is a very up-to-date mod. It's up to date with the latest version of Create. And I'm using these wheels from another mod to kind of help my plane out, because otherwise it's kind of hard. The plane just kind of drags on the floor and it can get stuck on things. So I'm going to fly this around a bit. I have this controller here and these are the frequencies. So this is for down, up, left, right, and this is to start and stop. So I'm going to go ahead and sit in my seat. You're going to want to have a seat because you don't want to fall off. And I think I might have enough runway. I'm just going to go ahead and press spacebar and I'm going to try and take off here. All right, so we have liftoff. This is a very light plane and it's not going too fast. I personally find that third person is the easiest way to control the plane, and it's going quite slowly. I think they might have changed the propellers in the last update. So I actually built this on a different update of this mod than the one I'm showing right now. They've added a few tweaks. So actually, if I want to go faster, what I can do is I think I'm actually just going to land it, and I'm going to change the propeller. So I'm going to try to not crash. Oh, I think I'm going to crash, but that's fine. It's small. I'm going to press spacebar to stop the engine. I'm going to dismount. And you know what? I'm going to take the Gravitron and I'm going to move it around a little bit. I'm going to bring it up here. And I think I'm going to add some blades. But not only that, I think I'm going to put on some wide blades. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and right click to disassemble this. Right click. There we go. And I'm going to take away these blades. So I got to make room in my inventory. I don't want to throw that out. Don't need this, so I'll just remove these blades. And you know what, let's go with 5 wide blades. Let's see how that works. So now I'm just going to right click here to assemble the bearing, and we're going to hear a sound that's going to tell us that it's assembled. Sometimes you have to click a few times. There we go. We hear the sound. Now we know that this is assembled. I'll just sit here. All right, now I have liftoff, I have thrust, and you can see that it's a little bit faster. Oh, it's not that much faster. I thought it'd be quite a bit faster. But either way, we have a noticeable gain of speed and I can fly around. So I'm flying, I'm tilting the plane over and then I'm pulling up if I want to turn in that direction. So that's how you steer the plane. A real plane would have a rudder, but since the Link controllers only have so many buttons, it's not really convenient unless you have other mods to also add a rudder. So I just have the ailerons to control the roll and the elevators to go up and down, just out of convenience, and that really does the job. So I don't need any more controls than that. So I'll just fly around a bit and I'll hit spacebar. Then I'll stop the engine and I'll try to land in a way that's not a total catastrophe. So let's just head down and hopefully I'll be able to land. So this is a very light plane, so it just kind of floats down. And there we go, I've landed my plane. So this is a simple build that you can make, and I'll be making all of this available as a world download on my Patreon. So back to the copter bearing. So this works a lot like the regular old propeller bearing, except for a few differences. But before I get into that, I just want to say one thing, and that's you can still use sails to make propellers just like you could in old versions of Clockwork. However, the new way to make propellers with the propeller controller is a lot more efficient. So it's really not recommended to do it this way unless you have a good reason, like you don't have the resources to do it, or you're just using an old design. So just one thing to note, something that I hear a lot is people are asking about, do the propellers have a counter torque? So what is a counter torque? Well, if we look right here, I have a setup where I have a physics bearing and I have a cambered wing on top, and that's spinning, and it's causing this bottom part to spin in the opposite direction. And we'll see that there's nothing spinning this bearing, so this is completely passive, and what this bottom part is experiencing is the counter torque from rotating this propeller or this cambered wing on top. So in real life, a propeller will cause whatever it's attached to spin in the opposite direction. That's why helicopters, one of the dangers is that they'll spin out of control if their tail rotor goes out. So the tail rotor, the little propeller in the back, that's to not only steer but also keep it stable to counter the counter torque. So real life helicopters do this. Real life planes, they experience a counter torque, so it's easier for them to roll one way than the other if they have one engine in the middle. However, propeller bearings and copter bearings do not provide a counter torque, which actually makes our lives a lot easier. And ultimately, I think it's just a more fun decision from a design perspective to not have to think about, oh, there's a counter torque that I have to adjust against. We just want to make planes and fly them around. So it's a good thing that we don't have to deal with the counter torque. But a lot of people think there is a counter torque, and they ask in the Discord, oh, do I have to adjust against the counter torque? And the answer is no, not with the bearings. But if you decide to make your own propeller with a physics bearing and cambered wing, the answer is yes. So I myself thought I had to do some sort of adjustment against the counter torque. So I made this helicopter with two rotors before I realized that no, I didn't have to do that. I even put some gyros. So this is kind of my prototype helicopter as I was learning how this works, and I'll show you how it works. But full disclosure, it's quite janky and I haven't really gotten the hang of it. So I wouldn't even say it's like a proper helicopter because it can't actually steer. It can strafe side to side, but I didn't add anything to steer. But we'll just see how these rotors work. So that's the goal, and one of the features of these rotors is that if I apply a redstone signal, well, they'll tilt in that direction. So I can tell them to tilt one way or the other. And here, well, I kind of got rid of the redstone link because I wanted to right click it. I needed to reassemble it, so that one's not there. But we can just tilt them over and we can steer in that direction. So let me just fix this and then we'll take this for a ride. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and sit here and I'm gonna turn off this lever and we're gonna fly a little bit. So like I said, this is a little janky, but I can steer a little bit. Well, not really steer, I can strafe and rotate. So if I press right, well, we're gonna turn more to the right. We're gonna roll to the right, or at least I hope. If I press back, we're gonna pull up. And if I press ahead, we're gonna kind of tilt downwards. Or we should, but you know, it's moving around a lot and I don't have a lot of control. But I do have enough control, I think, to get back more or less to where we were, which is a big difference than with my first design. So I'm just gonna go ahead and turn off this lever and it's gonna stop spinning. So hopefully we should fall down not too far from where we started, but at least we're not out in the middle of the woods over there. All right, so this is how not to build a helicopter, but it's kind of one of those experimental phases. So if you ever see those videos of the first planes that people were trying to make, I guess this is kind of what this is, you know? I'm trying to figure out how this mod works, and I made this kind of janky looking helicopter. I don't think I need these right here, so I haven't gotten to these, but these are gyroscopes. They're supposed to stabilize things. We're actually going to see how those work in just a bit, along with some other features, including how to transmit rotation and other things between ships. So there's some cool things coming up, but just wanted to mention those because I have them right here. So the gyroscopes add stability. Yeah, so if you go on my Patreon and you download this world, well, you'll be able to fly this not very good helicopter, but it's better than nothing, and I'm sure it'll help you learn how to build better helicopters in the future, or at least I hope it does. Alright, so we've seen how to make an airplane and how to make the beginnings of a helicopter, but there's still a lot more to see. So there's also how a balloon works, as well as the entire gas system that goes along with it. But before we look at that, we're gonna have a look at a few utility blocks. So here's the reaction wheel. So not to be confused with the gyroscope, which looks similar right here. They're both spinning wheels, but they have quite different purposes. So the reaction wheel is actually a lot like this propeller that I made here with the cambered wings on the physics bearing, whereas this spins whatever it's connected to in the opposite direction. What this will do, what the reaction wheel will do, is it'll spin what it's connected to in the same direction. So right now it's not spinning at all. That's because I have this set to follow angle. Once I put it on unlocked, it'll start spinning along with the reaction wheel in the same direction. So this lets you spin things without attaching anything to the physics bearing. So it's a way of getting some rotation without having an external force applying it to you. So you can, let's say, actually use this to steer some kind of ship. You put this in the ship and then it'll just start to spin. So that's a way that you can achieve some sort of rotation without an outside force being applied to whatever your physics object is. All right, so up next is the gyro. So what this will do is it'll stabilize whatever it's attached to. Actually, that's not quite accurate. It will stabilize it, but it can also do other things. So here I've got this physics object set up on this physics bearing, and normally if I start placing blocks, it's gonna tilt pretty quickly. So if I just place blocks, well, it will tilt, but it doesn't tilt as much as you might expect. So if I lower this, we're gonna see that the effect of the gyroscope is gonna go away and it'll tilt. If I speed this up, well, it's gonna go back to how it should be. So a real life gyroscope, I don't think will do this. It'll stop motion, but it won't magically go back to its position. This kind of gyroscope will. That's how it's made in the mod. So if I take off these blocks, it's gonna go back to the level position. And if I add a few, well, we'll see that the effect is negligible compared to if the gyroscope were not activated. So the gyroscope requires rotation to have its effect, and the higher the rotation, the greater the effect. So another cool thing about gyroscopes is that we can apply a redstone signal here on the side. So if I flick this lever, we'll see it'll tilt over. And if I flick this one, it'll tilt over another way. And this just gives us a way of controlling our ships. So kind of to give them a sort of tilt. So not only does it have a stabilizing effect, we can also make it tilt without applying any external force or using a propeller or, like we're gonna see later, rockets or jets. So next I'm going to show you one of my favorite features added by this update. This is the universal shaft and the compressible shaft. So what this does is it allows you to transmit rotation at any angle that you want. So instead of putting a shaft and a gearbox here to send it here, we can just send it directly in one line. So to place this, all you have to do is place a universal joint at each end. Then you just right click with the compressible shaft on one side, it'll say connection started, and then right click on the other side. So you can see the rotation is being transmitted. And the cool thing is you can also put this between ships, between physics objects. So this moves around and this moves around too. The only thing is that you can't go too far apart. If I go too far apart, we're gonna hear a sound that it breaks and it's gonna stop spinning. So to fix that, all you have to do is bring your ships closer together. I think I checked and it was about 10 blocks distance. You can just bring this back here and you just break it on either side. You place new universal joints and you also bring the compressible shaft between the two of them and it's going to work as good as new. All right, so now let's have a look at a new way of transferring items. We have the delivery cannon and the delivery chute. So the delivery cannon will transfer items to the delivery chute, and this works by setting a frequency. So the cannon will only shoot to the chute that has the same frequency, shoot to the chute. And another thing to keep in mind is that you can only place these blocks on either chutes, depots, or belts. So if you're trying to place it on the ground, it's not going to work. You can only place it on these 3 blocks. So what's the difference between the new delivery cannon and delivery chute compared to the weighted ejector and, say, a depot? Well, the difference is that we can transfer items between ships. So here I've got a ship with a delivery chute and I have one with a delivery cannon. So if I go ahead and place an item right here, it's going to be shot from this delivery cannon all the way to this delivery chute. So these are 2 different ships and we can now transfer items between ships. So up next we have a way of connecting ships together, and we do this with the spin-off bearing. So what this does is it allows us to connect ships together both with other ships and with the world. So here I can place this, I'm going to try and place this right over the bearing. They kind of have to line up. If I just release it, well, it should connect, but it's a little hard sometimes. There we go. So it's connected, and now these 2 things are connected together. So you can connect things to the world And this is useful. Let's say you want to have some kind of docking system. If you want to have an add-on to one of your ships, so let's say you have some kind of tractor and you want to add different tools to it. Let's say you want to have a plow or a harvester. You have some kind of machine that might have saws or drills, depending on what you're harvesting. Well, you can do that with this. You can have a lot of flexibility. You can have modular designs, and you can connect your things together by using the spin-off bearings. So once they're connected, they can spin freely. So maybe having something spin is part of the idea here. And to separate them, all you have to do is give it a redstone signal. So if I take this lever here and activate this, well, then the two will be able to be separated. So now I can just take it and it will no longer be connected to the other spin-off bearing. And we can do this both with ships to world and ships to ship. So if I have these two physics objects and I bring them close together, they will connect, they'll fly around a little bit, and they will dock on the spin-off bearings. And again, if I put a redstone signal, well, then they can be separated. The next components we're going to look at give us a way to sense the world. So we have the Pepatron, the Spinatron, the Impactatron, and the altimeter. So first of all, let's start with the Pepatron. So I have this Nixie tube right here, and this will tell us the redstone signal. So right now it's saying 0, and that's because it's telling us the distance between it and what's in front of it. So in that case, that's the ground. So if I take the Gravitron and I start to rise up, well, this number is going to go up because my distance is increasing. So 1, 2, 3, and the further up I go, the higher the number is going to be. So this is also adjustable. So if I take the screwdriver, so new item from Clockwork, and I right click it, we'll see these green lines are going to increase. So if I have it low, for each block that I go up, the number is going to increase by 1. And if I make it longer, let's say if I go to 2, well, then for each 2 blocks that I go up, the number is going to increase by 1. So you can change the sensitivity by modifying this green line here with the screwdriver. So now the next item that we're going to look at is the Spinatron. So the Spinatron has 3 modes. So if I right click the back here, we go from pink to green to blue. So I'm not sure what the first and the last settings are supposed to do here. They're just kind of, they seem to be randomly turning the light on depending on which direction they're facing. It's actually not random, but I can't tell why they're turning on exactly. So one of the things about this mod is that it's still in progress and a lot of the ponders aren't done yet. Fortunately, you can contribute to this project. So Clockwork is now open source. It has a GitHub. So if you want to contribute to this, you can, and I'm sure it would be much appreciated by both the devs and the community of users of this mod. So fortunately, I do know what the middle setting of the Spinatron does. So you see, as it's rotating, the number changes here. So based on the direction it faces, the number will change. Next, we have the Impactatron. So the Impactatron also has a few different settings. So what it does is it gives you a signal when there's an impact or when you're very close to having an impact. So if I go ahead and drop it down here, we're going to see it's going to go all the way to 15. So maybe if I go a little bit slower, we can see it better. So it reaches 15 before we really touch the ground. But that's fine. It tells us when we're going to have a collision or if we've just had one. Now, if I increase this value here, it's going to change the sensitivity. So here I'm going down and it's probably, I think, going to give me a signal later. It's not too visible on this setting. If I go all the way down, already we see it's changing. So if we go down here, it's going to 13. And if I lift it up, well, it's 0. And as I descend, it's slightly different. So maybe this is less sensitive. The idea is maybe it starts at 13 and then as we get closer, well, it still goes back between 13 and 14. So I'm not exactly sure how that's meant to work, but probably it is based on the distance, or maybe it's how fast. Do I have to go faster? Oh, maybe. If I shake it around, I thought I saw the number change. Maybe I was just getting close to the ground. Anyway, the Impactatron will give you a very strong signal when you've reached the ground, and it works the opposite way of the Pepatron, because the Pepatron will give you 0 because it's measuring distance, and if you're further away, it'll give you a higher number. If you go all the way up, the highest it can go is 15. So if you're at 15, you're very far away. But if you have values, you're close to something else. This is the opposite. It'll be 0 when you're far away, and when you're close to the ground, it'll tell you a very high value. So you see, it doesn't even have to face the ground. It just knows it's on the ground or in contact with something else. And finally, here we have the altimeter. So the altimeter doesn't use a screwdriver. This already existed in the mod, but how it works is that you tell it a height above which you want it to give a redstone signal. So I'm going to set it to 83 meters. Currently, we are at Y level 71. Now it is still on. That's because what I have to do is I have to first rise up to the level. See, it kind of flashed, and now if I go back down below the level, it's going to turn off. Or maybe not. Maybe this is still a little bit buggy, yet it turns off around that Y level. So I'm at 82.9, and if I rise a bit, it should turn on. Well, it's not turning on. And then it turns off as I go down, though I'm at 74. So this probably is not working as intended right now, but the idea is that it should turn on when you're above the Y level, and it should turn off when you're below the Y level. So we can actually check the ponder, and according to the ponder, you can configure it to the desired height, which I've done, and it says the output will trigger at the desired height. So unfortunately, the altimeter does not seem to be working quite as desired at the moment. So the next item on our list is the redstone resistor, and this is an item that already existed. So here I've got an input of 100 RPM, and I have the same thing at the output. So this can receive an analog signal. So currently it's at 0, and when I increase this, well, it'll actually decrease. So it decreases from 100% all the way to 0 based on the input. So it's at 10% right now, and I can reduce it all the way to 0. So this is a good way of slightly reducing your RPM using an analog signal. So if you want to have some kind of speed control, well, this is an easy way to set that up. Now, if you're like me, you're going to say, well, that sounds a lot like an adjustable chain gear shift. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is that set up like this, a chain gear shift will allow you to go from 100% of the speed down to 50% of the speed. So if I continue giving it a higher signal, eventually we'll get to 50 RPM, which is half of 100. So while the adjustable chain gear shift lets you go from 100% to 50%, or if you set it up backwards, from 100 to 200%, the redstone resistor from Clockwork lets you go from 100% all the way down to 0%. And now for one of the more fun items in the mod, this is the sugar rocket. So if this is a ship, so if I go F3 plus B and I see the outline, and I light it on fire with the flint and steel, well, it'll behave like a rocket and it'll fly off. So if you don't make it as a ship, it's not going to fly anywhere, but I'll just show you right now. So if you set it up here, it's not going to go anywhere because it's not a ship, but you were able to see how long each stage lasts. So if I put 2 stages here, well, the first stage is going to shoot, then the second one, and there it goes. So it doesn't last long. It gets consumed very fast, but it is able to go very fast. So the sugar rocket is a way of having some kind of consumable propulsion. Maybe if you want to make a rocket ship, you could use that. The mod also adds a brand new set of armor. So this is the aeronaut goggles, the aeronaut jacket, the aeronaut jumpers, and the aeronaut boots, and these are just about as strong as netherite, so they're a very late game item. And what's cool about this is you don't really have to make the choice of using netherite or this. That does have some features because you have the aeronaut goggles, which work just like the crate mod goggles in that they let you see information. So I can see the speed on the speedometer just like I had the create mod goggles. So without it, I don't see it. With the aeronaut goggles, I do see the information here, and I believe it also shows you additional information such as pressure. So if I go over here, we haven't seen the gas system yet, but this is a preview of the gas system. You can see stuff here. I put regular create mod goggles. Do I also see it? Let's see. So I put on the engineer's goggles. Oh, I also see them. So it seems that they work exactly like also wearing the create mod goggles, but you get to have a helmet. And though this armor is quite powerful, it does seem to be balanced because it does require the corresponding diamond armor as well as the meteoric nicks. So the meteoric nicks is going to come from meteorites, which haven't been added yet, but presumably they're going to be something rare and rather late game. So it also requires some leather, obviously because it's a leather jacket, and some wonderlight crystals, as well as some wool. And the helmet, of course, also requires the engineer's goggles. And another cool feature that the mod adds is a new music disc called Wanderlust. Alright, so now let's have a look at the gas system. So the gas system is quite complex and it has a lot of uses, from both powering machinery as well as to making balloons work. So just like fluids, you can store gases in tanks, and instead of pipes, you use ducts. So these pipes also have their own valves that work just like the liquid ones do. So gases have a lot of properties, including what they are. So there's steam, there's air, which have been implemented, and there's also other gases like phlogiston and the ether, which, by the way, don't actually exist. Those were old things that were theorized like 100 years ago or more. They don't actually exist, but they've been added in this mod. All right, so to better understand how gases work, I've set up this little example right here. So what we've got is an air compressor, a duct, a coal burner, and a gas engine. So when I say gas engine, I don't mean gasoline. I mean something like steam or hot air. So gases have several properties. Here we can see there's volume and temperature. There's no pressure yet because there's no pressure in the system. So the air compressor can be powered by a crank or any rotation. And we're going to see that the pressure in the system is slightly going to increase. And we also have some content. So we can see it has 8 grams or 9 grams of air. It kind of fluctuates. We have pressure in the system. Now what we can do is we can add some coal to this coal burner. So I'm just right clicking it and there should be an animation of it burning. So the coal burner itself is at 995 Kelvin and the pipe is in the 770s right now. So the heat is being transferred over to the gas engine, which I guess is consuming the pressure, and probably based on the temperature, it's going to give us a different output. So we put a steam engine that comes from Create Mod onto the gas engine and it'll spin a shaft, and we can see it's giving us 48 RPM and 8,192 stress units. So together this system produces a pressure and a temperature, and each element also has a volume. So the gas engine is 1 meter cubed and the ducts are a 1/4 meter cubed, and this is 1 and this is also 1. All right, so maybe you want to know how to control the flow of your gases. So first of all, we have the gas valve here. And if you look down here, we can see that we have 1,200 kilopascals or something like that, and 1,000 degrees Kelvin. If you look here, well, we have the same temperature, but we don't have the pressure. So that's because this valve is closed. So when it's going like this sideways, nothing is passing through. And we have this tank here, and we can see that it's more or less stable around 36 kilopascals. Now, if I open this valve, so that this arrow points straightwards like this, well, then we'll see that this will start increasing in pressure. So the pressure is going up here, or rather the gas, which has a pressure, and it will go into here. So now notice how these pipes here have a higher value. It takes some time to propagate, and then I guess because this is a larger volume, while it takes longer for the pressure to increase. So if I go ahead and close this, we're going to see that the gas in here in the tank is still increasing. So why is it still increasing if I've closed the valve? Well, that's because the gas in this pipe is still propagating. The valve is not at the entrance to the gas tank, it's before the gas tank. So everything in here will slowly enter here until it reaches some kind of equilibrium. So there are other ways of controlling gas flow, and that is with the screwdriver. If I press shift and I right click once, we can make it so that the flow of the gas can only go downwards in the direction that this arrow is pointing. If I right click again, we can go the other way. And if I right click another time, well, we'll see it looks like brass right here. And what this will do is this will completely cut off any transfer between the two sections. If I open this, I'll better be able to illustrate it to you. So we'll see that this part will continue to increase in pressure, whereas this part right here will stop increasing in pressure. So here we have 800 and here we're in the 400s. So when we're in this mode here, we can actually choose which gases to pass. So I said that it blocks all gases. That's not entirely true. That is just the default behavior. So if I right click here, I can actually choose which gas I want to be able to pass. So if I go ahead and click on air, well, then we've added it to the filter and we will allow air to pass. So right now, if I press escape, well, we'll see that the pressure is the same on both sides. And then if I right click again, I can remove it. And we'll see that the pressure will increase on this side, but it will not increase anymore on this side. And if we shift and right click again, we can change it so that it looks like this. So when it's in this mode, we can right click and have fine control over what type of gas it stops, or rather what properties of gas we're going to stop. So we can stop either based on temperature or pressure. So right now I have it set to 870 kilopascals. So if the pressure of the gas, imagine it's on this side of the equation, if it's greater than 870 kilopascals, it will be stopped from passing. So here, the pressure of the gas is over 1000, which is higher than 870 kilopascals. And on this side, it's only about 550. So the gas is not passing through because the pressure on this side is greater than the quantity that we set. So if I right click again and I'll just change this. So now the equation is different. I've changed this sign here, and now the gas will be allowed to pass through. So it will only stop gas that has less than 870 kilopascals of pressure. So for example, if I close this valve, and we'll see that this is, it's now at 870 because it was going through until it reached that amount. So if I right click again and I just reduce this a little bit, we're going to see the gas here is going to reduce to 867, or it looks like it reduced a bit more, probably because the way it works is it lets a big amount through and then it stops after that. So it's going to stop somewhere around that value. So another way of controlling the flow of the gas is with the gas pump. So I've gone ahead and isolated this piece of duct from the rest of the network just so you can see the effect of the pump more easily. So on this side, we have around 300, 400 kilopascals, and on this side, it's 550. And if I activate the pump, we're gonna see that this side keeps increasing in pressure and this part reduces in pressure because I'm pumping everything from one side to the other. So this will increase the flow of the gas as well as the pressure. So on this side we have 0.3 kilograms and on this side we have 0.8. And I can also stop it and I can also rotate it. So we can also reverse the flow. So we're going to see this side drop in both pressure and contents and this side rise in both pressure and content. So this is up to 0.4 kilograms and this has fallen down to 0.3 kilograms. So this next block is the redstone duct. And what this does is it emits a redstone signal if certain conditions are met. So to set the conditions, all I have to do is right click and set them right here. So I can scroll up and down with my mouse wheel. So for example, in this case, I can say that if the temperature is more than 850 Kelvin, then I want a redstone signal to be emitted. I can also say less than, and I can also scroll and hold down shift to scroll faster. So my options here are temperature, heat energy, pressure, and mass. We'll stick with temperature and I'll raise this up to over 1100 Kelvin. And we're gonna see that the light turns off. So right now you press escape to exit this. And now you can see that the conditions have been applied and the light will turn off. So I can go back here, I can set it to a lower value, press escape, and the light will turn on because it's emitting a redstone signal. It's at 986 Kelvin and I had it set to 850 Kelvin. Next, we have a very important block. This is the exhaust. So don't be confused with the exhaust from the factory must grow. So back to the exhaust, what does it actually do? Well, if I open the valve, we'll see we're going to see the pressure leave. So here we have a pressure, it's 200, 100, 160 and falling, and it's going up into the atmosphere. So why do we just want to get rid of pressure if that's something that we can use? Like our engine uses that. Why would we want to get rid of pressure? Well, the answer is that if the pressure goes too high, your whole system can explode. So if you mouse over your duct right here, you see that it says max pressure 16,375 kilopascals. If your pressure goes higher than that, it's going to explode. So to avoid that, we can put the exhaust here and we can open it when the pressure is getting too close. So now that I think of it, you could probably build something with a redstone duct so that when you're getting close to a certain pressure, you emit a redstone signal to maybe a sequence gear shift or something, and that would open the valve and allow the gas to escape. So another block that this mod gives us is the gas heater. So this is supposed to heat up our steam engines, our boilers, so that we don't need to use blaze burners or campfires. However, I haven't been able to actually get this hot enough so that it works. So here we can see that our boiler, okay, we have size, we have water, but the heat is still at 2 red bars, so the heat never gets high enough. So right now it's at close to 900 Kelvin, and these put out 1000 Kelvin. So I have a few coal burners here, and this can only ever get up to 1000 Kelvin because that's as hot as the coal burners are, yet it never gets hot enough. So I don't know if there's something that I'm not doing right or if this feature hasn't been fully implemented yet. So here I do have a boiler that is using blaze burners and I'm using it just to produce steam. So here you can see that I have an exhaust that I'm using to get rid of the excess pressure because this is building a lot of pressure. So I will remove the exhaust in just a bit and we'll see what happens when I do that. But first, let's have a look at these right here. So I have gas engines, and previously I had used regular old air with the gas engines, but we can also use steam. So I have a bunch set up here, and I'm getting 32 RPM and about 40,000 stress units. So like I said, I was gonna get rid of this exhaust. So let's look right here, and we have about 1,000 kilopascals, and if I get rid of that, that's gonna climb up pretty quick. So the limit of this is about 16,000. So let's just watch for a little bit, and we're gonna see what happens when it does reach 16,000 kilopascals. And there you go, explosion. So let's go ahead and put the exhaust back to prevent another similar tragedy. I'm gonna place these ducts, and I forgot to say that you do need to place a steam extractor. You can't just place a duct directly on a fluid tank. You gotta place a steam extractor, and I gotta place this again, this duct. Sometimes they don't line up. There we go. And now the steam is being extracted, so luckily we have this steam going to exhaust, but if I take it off, we'll see that the pressure continues to increase. So I'll go ahead and put that exhaust there so we don't have any more explosions, and we're going to move on to the next feature. So this is the extend on, and it works just like the universal joint except for transferring gases. So if I have an extend on either side, I can just place this spool and the other side and the gas will be transferred. So if we go and look here, we have pressure coming in and the two sides are connected, and this also works between contraptions just like with the universal joint. Oh, and there's also another back tank just for the gases. So if we place it down, we'll see that it has volume and it has temperature, But if we place it underneath the duct, well, it'll start filling up. So the pressure will increase and the temperature will increase based on the source. So I don't know what uses this yet. I don't know if it's been implemented, but it exists and you can fill it up just like this. All right, so the next feature that we're gonna look at is the gas crafter. So there's a whole bunch of gases in this mod. So if I go in just enough items here and we scroll around, where we're gonna see all the kinds of gases. So there's steam, which we've seen, there's ether, phlogiston, ozonite, bog, exhaust, vitriol, stellane, and air. So we've seen steam and air. The other ones, they don't appear to be implemented yet, and they don't really have crafting recipes. So eventually we'll be able to craft all these gases using the gas crafter. So all we really know about the gas crafter at the moment is what it says here. So it says that it processes crafting recipes that require gas as an ingredient when placed above a basin. So as of right now, that's all the information that we have. All right, so up next we have something pretty cool. This is the gas thruster. So it basically looks like a jet engine, and how it works is that we place a duct over here and then we can feed it with hot compressed air. So I have it set up right here, so by now this should be pretty familiar to you. I have an air compressor, I have a coal burner, and I'm sending the pressured air to the gas thruster right here. So I do have an extend on connected to this physics object. The animation is a little messed up, so it looks like it's connected down here, but as we can see, it's receiving air, so it's working as intended, just not graphically. So if you're going to be building any kind of modern aircraft, you're probably going to want to use the gas thruster. So we've seen that this mod lets you build airplanes and it lets you build helicopters, but there's another vehicle that it lets you build, and that is the balloon or the airship. So there's a couple of blocks that we're going to have to acquaint ourselves with before we can understand how it works. And the first one is the balloon casing. So the balloon casing will be used to encase a volume of air or other gas. So here we have a broken balloon casing, and the other block is the gas nozzle. So right now, if we look at it, it says that the balloon integrity is compromised and that gas is escaping. Well, that's obviously because I put some holes in it. So before we patch it up, we're gonna look at this gas system right here. So again, we have this compressor and we have the coal burner. So we are producing hot air that is under pressure, and here I have a valve that I close. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this valve and let the air flow up. So one of the things about the gas nozzle that actually I didn't know for a while was that you can give it rotation here on the side. And why is my balloon going up if it's broken? So balloons are a little bit buggy, as you can see. It shouldn't be going up, I don't think. Or maybe, is it getting enough air despite there being a leak? I'm not too sure how it works. I don't know if this is a bug or not. It feels like it should be a bug, but maybe it's smart enough to know that there's a partial leak, but there's some gas that can still give it lift. I'm not sure. So we just rose up and now we're falling back down. So I'm gonna say this is a bug. So I think the balloons don't really work as they should. They kind of work, but they've got some bugs that need to be ironed out. So I'm gonna go ahead and patch this up. And I'm gonna go and patch this up. And normally you have to right click. So when you're building this for the first time, you build your whole enclosure with the balloon casings, and then you right click here. And you can also control how much gets through. So by turning these valves, you can change the direction of this dial. So right now it's actually going up. So when it's more to the right, it will be hotter. It'll let more hot gas into there. And when you turn it to the left, it's gonna let less hot gas in there. So you see I'm going up and down. So right now, I think this is working as intended. Whereas before it seemed to be a little buggy, or might just be something that I don't understand. So if you turn to the right, you get more target temperature. So you have a higher target temperature if you turn it the dial to the right, and I'm seeing this information by crouching. So when I don't crouch, I don't see it, and when I crouch, I see a little bit more information. And when I turn it this way, we're gonna see that the target temperature is lower. So right now the target temperature is 0 Kelvin. And if I turn it this way, well, it's gonna be a bit higher, 449. And if I turn it all the way, well, it's 998. So I'm gonna leave it here for a while, see if we go back up. So we can see that the temperature in the balloon is rising. So the temperature in the duct is very high. The temperature in the balloon is only about 250 Kelvin, which is below freezing. So, I mean, 273 Kelvin is 0 Celsius or 32 Fahrenheit. So it's not entirely realistic because we're not in any sort of Arctic conditions. This should be at least like 290 if we're just like outside on a normal day. But this is just how it's represented in game. So now I think what's going to happen is I'm probably not going to fly because it's just getting stuck here. So often to get it to work, you have to place a new gas nozzle. That kind of seems to wake it up and make it understand that it needs to fly and I guess detect the gas that's there. So we're just going up, but we're going to go up and up until probably we reach a point where I guess our buoyancy isn't enough to make us keep going up. So you go up because the air is lighter than the surrounding air. But as you go up, the air gets less dense, so it's harder to be lighter than the less dense air. So we're still going up. We're at 373. Oh, it looks like we're going back down, but we don't reach some kind of equilibrium. We just fall back down, and I think we're going to fall back all the way down to the ground. So let's just watch here and try to figure out how this works. Oh, now I'm bouncing a bit for some reason. Okay. Oh, I kind of clipped through the floor there. Oh, well, now it is going back up. So I guess it kind of bounces up and down between, I guess, its maximum height, and then it drops down until I guess its buoyancy is enough to counteract that. So it seems we stop around 380, at least with this setup. So the balloon temperature is around 500, but it's dropping quite fast for some reason. And we're going to fall down. We're at 320 blocks. And the temperature in here is dropping. So I don't understand this mechanic, why this temperature is dropping. But now we seem to be reaching some sort of equilibrium. We're going back up again. So this is kind of working at the moment, which is kind of encouraging because up until now, I haven't really been able to observe this kind of thing happening. I was struggling a little bit with the balloon design. So this is basically how balloons work. I'm just going to turn this nozzle all the way down, and we should drop like a brick. So we'll get back to our original position because there's no wind or anything to blow us around. So we're just going to fall back to where we were. Okay. Cool. So that's the balloon, which is, it's actually working a little bit better than it was in my previous tests, which is strange, but I'll take it. So that was the balloon. So I also made an airship, but I had a lot of trouble with this. It's not really balanced. I'm going to right click here so that it detects the balloon, and we should go up, or at least I hope we will go up. So I actually have two propellers here, which should help us steer, but we're going to see in a bit what's actually going to happen. So actually, if we do F3 plus B, we're going to see that the center of gravity is not quite in the center of the ship. It's a little bit to the left, which is going to actually make it tilt back that way. So one thing to keep in mind is the balance of your ships is important because you're in the air. So there's nothing to stop you from tilting. So I guess I could put a gyroscope for more stability. And if I wanted to turn better, I could probably stick these further out just so that they have more leverage, so that they have more torque on the overall vehicle. So I'm not going up, which is too bad. Maybe if I break this and then fix it again, I'll start rising. So let me just grab another balloon casing. And I'll patch it up. And maybe we'll start flying. Do I have fire? Yes, I do have fire. And I have a lot of temperature in here. So this did fly. This has flown. I was doing some experiments with larger or smaller balloons. I don't know if it takes longer to fill up a bigger balloon. It must take longer to fill up a bigger balloon. Anyway, this has flown. However, it's not flying right now. So I don't think I'll be able to show it to you, though I did save some footage of when it actually did fly. So it was a little bit chaotic, but I'll show it to you anyway. So there you have it. That was Melting Point, the latest update for Clockwork. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you'd like to see more, then please consider subscribing and activating notifications. Thank you for watching.